it can get, what it can get, like a free fall, like a free.
So I'm Rachel Ellis, I'm the head of drama at CSVPA. So I was approached to be involved in the Creative Encounters project. The first interaction I had was reading about Dita and her research, and being aware that she was a poet, and therefore words for me was the first idea that came to mind. My experience as an actor and also as a director has always been how you use words and movement in combination. Often I think if you can say it with words, you can say it with movement alone as well, separately. So I've worked a lot with sign language as well, and how the body responds to interpreting words physically so they can be understood by an audience.
If you were to move through the space, do you move in a straight line, or do you move?
So the movement classes that I run here anyway always begin with how the body responds to different sensations, how it responds to text, but also to music, to visual stimulus, to the idea of the body in space and the dynamics of space, how you can move through space with a lightness, a strength. We looked at different ways of communicating as well through, I have a background in British Sign Language, so I trained as a British Sign Language interpreter, and I introduce them to sign language and then get them to explore their own, create their own sign language. Then you look at how they start to connect with each other, so doing outside stimulus, working pair work. We do a lot of pair work where the body's then responding to another person in their space. So it might be whether that's just following each other's, connecting with their eyes, or following, or having a cane in between them, but starting to have an outside impact on their body. The process of coming to the words of the poem was once I could see that they were responding imaginatively and confidently, physically, then I could start to introduce another stimulus, which were the words. Each person had a section of the poem to explore each word and understand what it meant and what it felt like. And that feeling became a rhythmic movement, a shape. And each word has its own rhythm, so the body would then respond and react to that rhythm. So the choreography came from each word separately, then forming a piece of choreography. And then we started to look at how each person's line of choreography could then match up with the next person's. They learned each other's, to start to explore how others move and how you can learn each other's choreography. And it's not easy. It's something that can feel very alien in your body, as something that one person moves in a particular way and another person moves completely differently. So it's been a real, it's become an expression of the group in lots of ways, but each person is very different. So the workshop with John Z.D. was not, his approach to, is not so dissimilar to things I was already doing with the students and working on with them. And so it felt, I think we all felt very at home immediately in that space with him, and he was really positive energy and really able to challenge them physically. I mean, I joined in the workshop and I realised that this is how much my body has changed since I would be acting every day. Now as a director and a teacher, when you leave from the front, you forget sometimes what it's like to actually do it. And it was great for that, for me, to be having to respond to the stimulus of right now, create a movement that is in response to this word. And you're going to ask the audience to work out what that word is. For me, imaginatively, it was great. It was great because I was, in groups with some of my students as well, to see how they work in the group and to realise the difficulty when you ask people to create a physical reaction to this stimulus of a word, an idea, is a big thing to respond to. So I enjoyed being on the receiving end of that. Seeing how the students responded to the section of devising from their own monologues, the texts that they already had, and that gave me lots of ideas in terms of then coming back into the rehearsal space for working on the poem, using the examples of the work they created there so they could show it to all the other students, because not all of them were there.
Well, so let's just take bully with your grandiose self-importance and lectures and arias. Let's look at the fagaya.
Good, great. Do it the other way round as well, so they all see it, yeah? Lovely, yeah?
The films, John Z. Dee's films were a big inspiration for our project, so sharing those with everyone, and I think really looking at the power of the rhythm of words and how you say a word and how you move to that word.
Euclid was wrong, Euclid was wrong.
So when it came to recording, we'd rehearsed in the studio and I had asked them to become very aware of their movement and speaking at the same time. So when we came to record in the studio, they were speaking in the rhythm of their movements. And then you find yourself in a smaller space, just having to speak into a microphone. And so there they had to connect imaginatively to what their body was doing at the same time. So it was a really good exercise in terms of the tempo, the dynamics of their movement, and how when they speak, that the words would be put together with their movements.
A cloud of rapid, etherized bass, changed in a song.
Some of the text lost the dynamic quality of the movement in the recording of the first recordings. We recorded it twice, we had to come back to it because they became very conscious then just of the voice, and the rhythm was kind of lost because it was all about recording, standing very still and recording. So to find that expression, that's a whole part of training for an actor, is to learn how to match what you're saying with how you move. The second recording captured that the dynamic of their movement with speed and tempo of the words changing, I think. When we were recording the movement without the soundtrack again, it's works the other way. They had to try and hear their voice and remember the tempo of their own voice to match their movements to it.
Into this song, we're pouring our souls on the edge. This body protects, what it can get, like a free fall,
It's a very different thing to hear the poet speaking her words, and it's just incredibly dynamic. It's so difficult for us to capture that with our students because, first of all, most of our students are not native English speakers, and so to get their mouth and the shape of the words so they're clearly pronounced at the same time with the attack that I really felt that Dita had with her delivery and the speed. So it was a great thing for them to hear before recording again for a second time. So I played Dita's recording and we tried to move at the speed that she spoke, and it just meant it would have been everything in hyperspeed. So we needed to accept that the way that our students would approach the spoken word poetry was going to be their own experience, their own voices, and each voice next to each other in the recording is very different to one person speaking the whole thing. So it doesn't have the same quality of the spoken word delivery that Dita has with her poem, which is wonderful, and is a whole other project waiting to be done.
Rouged on a skin soft to caress, a soul's fired up and picked up the pace of pain.
I love the idea of being outside and being out of the studio, and when we first went outside, we just took a few of the students to find a space, and it was like the underpass of just right near where the studio is, with graffiti on the walls and cyclists coming past and trees in amongst the sort of concrete. And the response from the students was they felt free. They felt that their choreography was much freer there than perhaps in the studio. So it was a totally different experience to take it outside. And then to look where we wanted to film it, because obviously once you go outside, you are confronted with the public and permission. And so I wanted somewhere big and open, but also that showed Cambridge and showed the elements as well. So we had luckily a beautiful, bright winter day, blue skies. I love the footage by the river in nature, and I think the location was dictated by the story in the poem of being out in nature. There's so much talk of mountains and rivers, and we don't have any mountains here. It's Cambridge, it's very flat, so it's looking for what would represent that, what would represent the imagery and the nature in the poem, in the nature in Cambridge. So we have footage by the river, we have footage across the river on bridges that seem to be very symbolic as well, and metaphors in the poem, trying to find matching locations that would really emphasise what was being spoken.
Protects, this body protects what it can get, what it can get.
If we were to do it again, then I think it's the decision-making process, in making a decision early on to make a film. Seemed like we had lots of time, but realising that you need a lot of time after filming to make the film.
Like a free fall, a chrysalis sphere, cold pressed to conceive, just like our tears.